Cool. All right. So today we're going to talk about hashes. Um, I don't know. I guess I was very excited when I was writing the title of this lesson. I think hashes are fun. It's a fun data structure. And I really enjoyed this lesson too. You're going to be doing a lot in this lesson and a lot of exploring. And we're going to really talk about the differences. Well, we'll touch on the differences between arrays and hashes and determine which to use, when's a good scenario for an array, what's a good scenario for a hash. We'll talk about how you're going to interact with hashes. How do we create a hash? How do we query a hash? How do we write to a hash? Lots of good stuff. And then we're going to touch more on the symbol data type because that's utilized a lot in hashes. So we'll touch on that a little bit more as well. I should have asked this at the beginning. I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me and see my screen okay? Can I get a thank you. Cool. Cool. So for your warm-up, just take a couple of minutes and think about this problem. So we've got this array stored in fridge items 1, and it's an array of a grocery list that you might go to. So think to yourself a little bit, like what could be problematic about this? Why is this confusing, or is it confusing? And how else might we prefer to structure a grocery list? So just take a minute or two and jot down some ideas on that. Okay, let's come back together. So I'm curious to just hear about what you think is problematic or what thoughts you had about this structure, what might be better, just any kind of thoughts you had about it. Dominic, do you want to share some thoughts that you had about this warm-up question?
I would think that there's some problems with listing each item multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What kind of problems? Like let's think about this in an everyday. Like if I gave you this list, I said, Dominic, we're going to have a party. We're going to make some omelets apparently, or breakfast burritos. And I give you this list. Would you be annoyed with me?
Yeah. So you could just list it. I mean, as a hash makes a lot more sense. You could just say, I want this many eggs, and one could be the value and one could be the pair.
Yeah, totally. And you're already getting into some stuff about the hashes too, which is great. Thank you so much, Dominic. So yeah, I would be really annoyed if someone gave me this because I'd be like, okay, eggs, you want how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like we got to count all the eggs, right? And what about if I decided, oh, well, let's invite front end too. So I want to add a bunch of eggs to this, and that would be added at the end. And so then you've got to like look all over this array for all these items. They're not grouped together like we'd want them to be. So I think, Dominic, you mentioned something good about like a hash. We have these like key value pairs, okay? And so what a hash will do for us is allow us to group these things together and say like, okay, if we have eggs, how many eggs do we have? I'm not going to really count them. There's 8 eggs. And if we've got avocado, oh gosh, avocado, then we want 4 of those, right? Some kind of structure like this, like a list that says, here's the item, here's how many. Okay, I had the chat open, but I have to close it because you all are too funny. This just seems much more intuitive. So it gives us a different kind of structure. So we can utilize, as Dominic and as this lesson hinted at, we can use what's called a hash. So a hash, we create a hash using curly braces like this, and it consists of key value pairs. So let's use this one that we have here. So eggs is a string, and that's going to be my key. And I'm going to use this symbol here, which is actually called a hash rocket. Oh, look, I have it set up right here for me. Hash rocket, I'm going to put a comma here after the value, and then this will indicate that this is the next key value pair. So in an actual Ruby file, it's going to look like this. So this indicates to me, okay, eggs, we've got 8 eggs. Avocados, I have 5 avocados. And this is much easier to read if you have some kind of list. Some other, I'm sorry, not a list. Usually when you say like a list, we're talking about an array. This would be some kind of like a lookup, or some other programming languages call this a dictionary, right? Because we're looking for a key, and then once we say, okay, fridge, how many tortillas do you have? It will spit out the value of those tortillas. All right, there's still so much we have yet to even touch on, but are there any questions yet? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about creating this new hash. So here, I just created a hash, we can call this like a hash literal, which means I just literally wrote out the hash with curly braces. Okay, another way to create a hash, let's say like fridge2, we can use, hash is a built-in class in Ruby, so we can use hash.new and actually instantiate a new class. So that's two ways we can do that. If we pull up a prize session, we can look at these. Ruby Playground, I think. Yes. Cool. And so we can see our fridge is a hash with our key value pairs. And then fridge2, well, that's an empty hash right now, which makes sense. I haven't put anything in there. I just instantiated a new hash object. Question for you. So take a minute and think about this one. If I did this, let me copy this fridge and put it in, let's make a fridge3. Oh gosh, not what I meant to do. Okay, so do you see what I did there? I just flipped the line. So fridge3 is avocados, then eggs, then tortillas. Fridge1 has eggs, avocados, tortillas. Does that matter? Like the fact, are these two fridges the same or are they different? Think to yourself for a second. Okay, any thoughts on that? Are those two fridges the same? Ben?
My first instinct is that they're pretty much the same, but the only reason that they might be different is because each of the key value pairs might have an address in memory, and those two memory addresses for the fridge1 and fridge3, like the order of the memory addresses might be different. So that's the only indicator to me that they might be different.
Okay, awesome. I like it. Sam, what do you think?
They're the same in like properties, but if you were to target, if you wanted to change fridge1, it would not change fridge3. So like, it's different.
I see what you're saying. You're saying like, yes, I have two different variables, right?
Yeah, two different variables, two different identities, but they can have the exact same properties.
Okay, yeah, awesome. Jordan, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, if you were trying to find out how many avocados you had from all of your fridges together, would it be easier if you had them in the same key value, like spot, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. Normally, that's an interesting scenario, right? Because if I think about like real life, I've got a fridge and my neighbor has a fridge, and maybe we want to add the things together, maybe we don't. That's
yeah, or
really,
like your restaurant with multiple refrigerators doing a party.
Yeah, see, right? So Jordan, I love that. I can see a situation where like you'd want to know what's in each fridge separately, but maybe there's a method that combines everything and says, how many avocados do I have total? Oh, I love that. Awesome. Aiden.
Like functionally they're the same because they're unordered pairs.
Yeah, cool. So that was great. Well said. So with hashes, order does not matter. Okay, so these two hashes, although yes, they are different because I've stored them in two different variables. So I created two hashes, but these hashes are essentially the same. Okay, so in a hash, the key value pairs do not matter. How about in an array though? Does the order matter in an array? Sure, Gus.
Yes.
I love it. Yes, yes. And you're totally right. And order does matter in an array, right? Once you put something as that first element, that's where it's going to be all the time. That's where it has to be you can check for that to make sure that that specific element is the first element. So, but in our hashes, order does not matter. Jesus?
So can you say that they contain the same data, but technically the index are different, right? So if X, it was the first index, now in fridge 3, it's no longer X, it's avocado. So technically it holds the same data, but the index is all over the place.
I'm really glad you said that. Hashes do not have indexes, right? That an array.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
Yeah, I know. I love it. An array has indices, plural of that, right? Because you can query an array. Like with this one, we would be able to do, fridge items 1, 0 to query that index. Hashes do not have that property. Awesome. I'm really glad you said that. Cool. So but you mentioned like querying a hash. We want to query a hash. I've got a fridge here. Well, actually, I guess that doesn't matter. I've got a couple of fridges here. I want to know how many eggs I have in fridge 1. So how do we do that? So what we'll do is we're still going to use bracket notation, kind of like querying an array with the index. But instead of putting an index inside the brackets, we're going to put the name of the key that we want. Now, keys are unique, so we don't have to worry about hitting, like there's not going to be another key called eggs. That would create some problems. So keys are unique in a hash. So if we query fridge 1, so fridge 1, remember, is the name of this hash I have, and I want to know how many eggs I have. So I'm going to use my bracket notation, and inside that bracket, I'm going to put the name, the name of the key that I want. Okay, so that's how I query a hash. And when I hit enter, it gives me the value associated with that key. Okay, and this is where we can see the order doesn't matter. If I query the same thing in fridge 3, it's just looking for eggs. It doesn't care where that key is within the structure. It's just looking for eggs. Catherine.
So what if I wanted to know just the items that are in the fridge, like just the keys, and I didn't need to know the value? Is there a way that you can query those as well?
There sure is. And I'm actually not going to answer that question because it's such a good question that you're going to practice it in your breakout rooms. Okay. So I'm going to pause on that. After breakout rooms, if that's still unclear, please ask that question again. Awesome. Cool. Any other questions about querying a hash? Whoop. Okay, so here's a fun thing we're gonna do. So with learning, sometimes what is helpful with learning, Sam, let me say this and then I'll come over to your question, is if you contemplate a question before you even know the answer, it actually starts to develop the neural pathways to help you learn the concept. So we're gonna play with that idea today and do breakout rooms. I'm gonna ask you questions to things you might not even know the answer to or not even have any idea. So this is where the lesson plan, which is on the backend website, will come in handy. Google Docs will come in handy, that kind of thing. But I want you to start exploring these things, and then we'll come back together and talk through your solutions and any questions that came up. Sam, you put your hand down. Do you still have a question?
So you're saying that in terms of like, if you had an array of like 100 objects, order does matter because it takes a long time to get to the last object. But with a hash, if you had that at the 100th item, but you access that key, it should be as quick as a hash with 2 objects, and you access the first item. It should find it just as quick as like a tiny hash.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about performance. Hashes are typically very performant because of how they work. It's just looking for that key rather than iterating through a huge array. Sometimes arrays are preferable. It really, like, you're going to get that age-old question or answer, it depends, right, on the situation and the context. But yeah, if you had an array of 1 million items, and and you did some kind of like, say like a find all or a select, it's going to go through 1 million items, and that's going to use a lot of processing power. Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Cool. So let me, in your channel, I'm going to drop what you need to do for breakout rooms. You'll have one person screen share, and I put in there what's the determining factor. Other people can code along or just work through Driver Navigator as a group, and we'll spend about 10 minutes and then we'll come back together to discuss. Any questions about what you're doing in your breakout rooms? Okay, have fun exploring. Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit about what you found out and how that investigation went. So if I've got my suitcase hash here, how would I, if someone wants to raise their hand to come off mute, how would I add 3 shirts to my suitcase? I know at least one group figured it out.
Can I try?
Yeah, absolutely, Karen.
Can you pull up your terminal again?
Yeah. Oh, can you see my?
Oh, we're in Pry? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All of
Right.
a sudden, I don't know what I'm doing.
That's okay.
Suitcase. Never mind. I don't want to try anymore.
That's okay. Yeah, and so, okay, perfect. Aiden, go ahead.
I think we would do suitcase and brackets, and then put shirts in the string shirts inside of the brackets,
Okay.
and then set it equal to 3.
Yeah. Cool. So that just gives me back a return value of 3, not helpful. So let's go ahead and check out suitcase. Yes, and now it has added a key value pair. So what we can do is when we want to add something to our hash, we use this bracket syntax, this bracket notation to indicate here's the key that I want to be in this hash, and I'm going to set it equal, so assignment operator, set it equal to 3. And that syntax will set the key value pair as a new key value pair in my hash. Okay, so now if I want to say, okay, did that work? How many shirts do I have? I can use my query syntax, my bracket notation, and shirts, and query that, and it will look in my suitcase hash for the key of shirts, and will spit back to me the return value, or the value of that key of 3. Sam, question.
So the first time we make a hash, that's the only time we'll use the hash rocket symbol. And even if we create a new item in the hash, like shirts or even like jacket, we will use an equal sign instead.
Right, so
right?
the hash rocket is the notation that's inside of the hash. So if I'm writing out a hash literal, I can do that. But usually, like in code, right, that this is already established, the variable's established, and I need to add things dynamically. So I wouldn't go in there and like literally start adding something to this. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Because if I was, I can add it like that with a hash rocket. But because I want to add this more dynamically with code, then we use the assignment operator. So this different syntax. Does that help clear that up a little bit? Awesome.
Yeah, so it's only supposed to be, the hash rocket should only be in the hash basically, right?
Yep, it's just inside of those curlies. Absolutely. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And the next one, so Karen, do you want to help me with the next one of adding a key value pair of swimsuit equals true to my suitcase hash?
I can take a stab at it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So suitcase, and then would it be a bracket? No, would it be a bracket with suitcase and then a pipe with a key value pair? Am I making that up?
Kind of. So what we want to do is the same like type of structure, right? Because our suitcase right now, if we look at it, it does not have the key of swimsuit. So I want to add the key of swimsuit, and I want the value of the swimsuit to be the Boolean of true.
I'm giving up.
That's okay. So let's just look, Isabel, go ahead and we'll phone a friend.
So you're going to put suitcase, bracket,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to write in the string swimsuit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then you're going to assign that the value of true.
Yes. Right. So now if I look at suitcase, I can see that that is there. So whenever we want to add a key to our hash, we're going to use this bracket notation, put in the name of the key that we want to set, and then use our assignment operator to set that equal to the value. And that'll set this as a key value pair inside of our hash. Okay. Cool. And what I wanted to show here is that the value can be anything. A value can be any data type. It could be another string. It could be a Boolean. It could be an array. We'll talk about that next week. The value could be an array. And so the values can be pretty much anything. Cool. How about take the socks out of your suitcase? Did anyone get to that? And want to share, and how did you do that? Yeah. V, do you want to go ahead and share?
Use the method delete. So suitcase dot delete, and then same notation as when you add. So like brackets and then the key, and then once you delete the key, is going to delete the value as well.
Didn't like that one.
Oh, it's not brackets. Sorry, it's parentheses.
Yeah, perfect. Right, because dot deletes our method, and we're passing it an argument of the key that we want it to look for to delete. Oh, interesting. Gives us the return value of the value that was associated with that key. And now if we look at suitcase, there are no longer any socks. Cool. And I forget about these methods. And so when I forget about them, where do you think I go? I go to my Ruby docs. I just look up my hash class, and it tells me all of these methods. So I can see like, oh, there's the delete. So I know delete, pass it the value, a key, and it should delete that for me. So we'll utilize those docs. All right, the next one, oh gosh, where's all my code? Is check for how many jackets we have in our suitcase. James, I know you had your hand up earlier. Do you want to help me with that one? Like how many, this is an interesting one. How many jackets do I have in my suitcase?
Yeah, so you just put in suitcase, bracket, a string that's called jackets, and then end it. And then you would just return that, and it's going to return nil because you don't have any jackets.
Ah, I love it. So if we query a hash for a key that does not exist, we're going to get back nil. Store that away in your minds, okay? You're going to need that information. Alex, question. Thank you, James.
Could we also use like the fetch method for that?
Yeah, so there's Ruby's so great because there's a million methods to accomplish the same thing. So there is this method called fetch. And if you pass it a key, it should do the same thing and give you the value. So let's test it with jeans. We actually have jeans in there. So if we do suitcase.fetch jeans, whoops, awesome, works the same way. Suitcase, bracket notation, jeans, awesome. So either way will work. And that's the beauty of Ruby. There's so many ways to accomplish the same thing. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, and so, oh, who was it that asked the question about what if I want to just see all of the keys that I have in my hash, like all the items?
That was me.
Yeah, what did you get to that one in the breakout room?
Yeah, it's just suitcase stat keys.
I love Ruby. Yeah. And then we get this array of all of our keys. Now, it turns out we can do the same thing for values. However, I'll say you probably use the values one less often because remember, keys are unique. The values are not unique. So a lot of times we don't, we wouldn't query just all of the values. The other problem that might arise with doing dot keys or dot values is these may or may not line up anymore. Now they should line up, like whatever's index 0 here, it should also, the value will be the index 0 in the dot values. So they should line up, but we don't have a way of actually confirming that, but they should line up. So that's just some other useful, potentially useful knowledge. Okay, what other questions came up in your breakout rooms? Oh, I stopped this. Okay, we'll take a we'll take a palm right after this this piece. But what other questions do you have? Dominic.
So I know you said you usually won't be doing this, but can you make it fetch a specific value and see if you have the exact shirts or jeans of something? Like if you
let's see.
push in 4.
That's a good question. I'm not positive, to be honest. Can you pass value question mark? Ooh, you can pass it a value. So has value, you can pass it a value and it'll give you a true or a false back. Cool, good to know. And then also values at, what does that do? No, that's at a key. Values, I'm wondering if you could pass it an argument. It doesn't look like you can pass values an argument, but it looks like what you can do is check for a has value and maybe get a true or a false. Here, let's see, suitcase dot has value of 1, right? Has a value of 2. Huh, okay. So you can do things like that.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, I love it. Whenever you wonder, can I do a thing? Yeah, totally try it. Go to the docs, get an idea of maybe what you might be able to, what method you might be able to play with, and then just go in a prize session and try it out. I love it. All right, let's take a 5-minute palm and we'll come back and do some more exploring. Did any questions come up over the palm? While I'm waiting for questions, I'm going to do breakout rooms again. That'll be good. All right, so we've got another task for you to explore some hashes. And I will drop that in your channel. We'll spend about another 8 to 10 minutes with that. And you'll have a different person screen sharing, potentially. Could be the same person, depends on how you match the criteria, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just send you off and I'll pop around the rooms. Okay, that one was fun, huh? So would any group or person like to come off mute, and what was your solution to being able to print each key value pair in a string? Like there are 3 dogs, there's 6 cats, there's 1 bird. Any takers? Yeah, Ben, go right ahead.
We went with an each do loop. And so what that would look like, it would be you have your hash and then it's, pets.each do, and in your block variable there's going to be 2 of them. On the left there's pet and then comma, and then we did number, or you could do like amount or number or whatever it is. And then inside of your loop it's just the puts there are, and then you can interpolate number and then pet in 2 separate interpolation things.
Gotcha.
Or, and then you can put like an apostrophe S if you want to be fancy.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes, I don't need to be fancy. Cool. Yeah, let's just run this and see what we get. Whoops. What did I do? Number. Oh, I called it amount. It helps if you match your variable names. Woohoo, there are 3 dogs, 6 cats, one birds. Okay, well, we would fix that, but yes. Cool, awesome, thanks so much. Sam.
I noticed that if you string interpolate a key, Ruby assumes automatically to turn it into a string. Whereas if you try to do that with a number variable, like if you were to put the hashtag or octothorpe bracket and a number, it would tell you you need to turn it into a string first. So I'm kind of like curious
Mine didn't do that.
Like for me, if I were to pass in a key, which is a symbol to a string interpolation, it would usually, I would automatically assume to turn that into a string, a symbol. But here, automatically, it turned into a string.
Yeah, so with string interpolation, right, whatever you put inside of the brackets gets evaluated, and then it just adds it into the string. So this is a number, amount is a number here, an integer, but it printed out just fine. So I wonder if you're getting some odd error.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely something I can follow up with you and kind of look at. But yeah, so Ben, thank you so much for sharing this. Let's talk about this. Right, so we've seen .each before in our array, right? Or used on an array. So we could do like fridge items .each do, and then when we do the do keyword, then we get a block variable. But we only get one block variable with an array. Now with a hash, what's cool is we actually get 2 block variables. This one, the first one's going to represent the key, and the second one represents the value. So you'll see it written like this a lot, key and value. What I want to encourage you to think about in your code is variable naming. Naming your block variables key and value is not very descriptive of what that data represents. So I really like that Ben's group called it pet and amount, because that's what the keys, they represent pets, and then the values represent like a quantity or a number or an amount. So we just want to be mindful of what we're naming our variables. So let's look inside of here and see what's going on. Oh, yeah, that'll hit. Cool, so I'm inside my price, I'm inside this block. So if I look at my block variable of pet, I can see that it's, ooh, what is that? What data type is this? Gus?
It's a symbol.
Yes, Gus, I love it. You're like my one-word person today. Like, yes, symbol. Yes, thank you so much, Gus. It is a symbol. So we've seen these symbols before in adder readers, right? When we have our adder reader, we'll do something like this, and or, you know, name number, right? We'll use that symbol, and that symbol represents a method. So symbols can be used for things like shortcuts. They're similar to strings. But the difference is that a symbol is immutable, which means once you have established, wait, did I say, I might have said that wrong. A symbol is immutable. So once you have, I don't remember what I said now. Once you have a symbol established, you can't change it. Whereas a string, you can alter and change those strings. So a lot of times, what you'll see in Ruby is the keys represented as symbols. Here's one thing I want to show you. What this is actually a shorthand notation. What this actually is the symbol of dogs, hash rocket. Right? So our data types are actually symbols. And then our hash rocket, so it points to the value. But in Ruby, we do this so often that Ruby gave us a shortcut, which is how it was written. Here, let me just copy paste that. This is the shortcut notation for this. So when you see the colon on the right-hand side, that's a shortcut saying dogs is a symbol, And there's a hash rocket hidden underneath the hood here. We're just not displaying it because we're using the shortcut, and the value of the dogs is 3. Okay. Ben, go ahead.
So can you think about symbols as like a constant string kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of like a constant string. The cool thing with symbols that you can use them typically as like a label. I think about this in context of like, say you had some kind of object, like an item that was for sale, and you wanted to track the status of the sale, right? So maybe like a pending, a paid, or a complete. And so we've got these like labels that we can put as an attribute. And if we want to reuse that kind of symbol, if we want to reuse that kind of label, a symbol is a great place to store that data in. So we'd have like, either it could be a pending or a complete, because what happens, symbols are highly efficient. They get stored in the same place in memory. Well, you know, it's kind of fun to do. Let's segue for a second. Let's do sim1 equals pending. Symbol 2 equals pending. Wait, I'll do this one as a string equals hello. Well, I'll do string 1 and then string, oh gosh, string 2. Okay, so I've got let's do the strings first. So I've got 2 strings, right? And so string 1, I can actually do a method called an object ID, which will show me where it's stored in memory. So I've got some memory location. If I look at string 2, even though it's the same string, oh gosh, I had spelled it wrong. It's stored in a different memory location, even though it's the same exact string. With the symbols, let's look at symbol 1 is stored in this memory location, and symbol 2, same exact symbol, same exact memory location. So what's happening is Ruby is seeing like, oh, this is the same as this. So instead of creating a new place in memory to store this, it's the exact same. I'm just going to point back to the old one that I have stored. And so these become highly efficient as keys for hashes because they're all just going to point to the same memory location. This was all like a fun segue. If none of this made any sense, don't even worry about it. Okay, nice to know, not a need to know. Right, so, but so often you just see in Ruby your your keys represented as symbols. So thank you for bringing that up. And that's not even what we were talking about. So let's go back to this. Any questions about those symbols? Feel free to ask questions about them throughout. You'll see them often. But here's what we were doing. So we were looking at pet. So pet is holding the symbol of dogs, which represents our key. And then our amount is the value. So we can use that information and then just do string interpolation or some kind of calculation or something to check that out. Here's another interesting thing. Whoops. Is you don't have to input 1. What if we just did a single block variable? So we're still inside the block. So now if I just do the single block variable, because it's iterating, .each, right, is iterating over the key value pairs of my hash, it puts the key value pair into an array. Okay, so we can still then do array methods on this to try to access that information. Right, so within here, if we only had 1 block variable, we could do something, you know, like info1 and then info 0 for that first index, the key, and then the value. It will give us the same result, but which one was more readable It's okay, you don't have to answer. I know which one was more readable. Okay, so that's just something else to think about. Now, if you're like in an independent challenge and you totally forget and you only put a single block variable and you recognize this, that's fine, make the thing work, right? But just know if you have a hash and you want to iterate over the hash, Ruby gives you two block variables that you can utilize. Okay, cool. What questions do you have about iterating over hashes, about hashes in general, about how we query a hash, how we can add a key, that kind of stuff? Alex.
So for that question on like print out this many dogs or this many cats, we were trying to build it using symbols. And I know I've done this before, but I didn't get the syntax right. Couldn't we have called it in somewhat using string interpolation with those symbols? Like either as a method with an input or something like that?
Can you walk me through kind of what you're talking about?
So in a perfect world, let's pretend this has like, there's 1,000 different pets in this category. So we don't want to loop through them and print them all. We would like to define a method. So, you know, we could say like print pet or whatever you want to call the method. And I would like the input of that method to be a symbol or take a symbol. And then use in string interpolation to put, there are, you know, X amounts off of that symbol of that key, you know, print out the value and print out the key.
Yeah, so what would this code look like in here? I think that's a great thing, and you're probably going to want to do that, right? Like you don't want to list all the pets, you're just looking for like the dogs specifically. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah, so what would the code inside of this look like?
I think it's going to be something like, you know, puts in your parentheses, there are, you know, like pets dot, we're going to want to use the value first. Like use string interpolation to put like the pets dot the value, and then I'm not sure how to pass it a key specifically. Okay, awesome. So it'll be pets dot value then that, or
Wait,
is it?
There are, hold on, pets dot, hold on, I'm trying to think of it. We want the value first. Yeah. So if this, you're on the right track here, right? So if this is my hash, right? Actually, let's stick a pry in here. This is a great question. I've got to invoke this print pets, right? And let's say we want to pass it dogs, right? I've got to invoke my method here since and I had to put this in here because I'm not inside of a class. So I need to make sure that this variable is in scope.
That might be what we did wrong.
Yeah, common, so common. But so if I look at what pet is here, right? Pet is my symbol. So what code would I write right here in pry to say, to figure out how many dogs I have? How many of this?
It would be pet dot value, right?
Well, pets,
yeah.
Pets dot value would give me, give me all the values.
Okay. Could we do pets dot value, then that bracket, and then the symbol we're trying to pass?
I think no, with the values, you could check a value. What we want to do is query this hash for this specific key, right? So basically I'd want to do this. Right?
But we only wanted to print the amount of dogs, not both dogs and three. Okay.
Yeah, so we want to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So if we look at right here, our variable pet, because that's what was passed in. Remember, I'm inside this method. So the pet variable was passed in from my argument here on line 47. And so what I can do to make this a little more dynamic, right, is pets and then bracket pet, right? Because pet is just the symbol of dogs. And when I query this hash with the specific key, the return value is the value from that key. So yeah. You're right on here.
But so we do it pets.pet that way, but when we want just the, you know, we want to actually say print dog if we return dog, what's the string interpolation for that? Is dot?
So if we want to say like there are 3 dogs.
If we want to do the exercise. So right now we have the amount printing, but I'm confused, like how are we going to call that input? Just pet again.
Yeah, because we passed it in right here as a variable, right? Or as an argument and named it pet.
Okay, I didn't see that in the code. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so then that should work. Let's try it. There are 3 dogs. Awesome. Yeah.
Thank
Right. And this is great because this one, you're actually not doing iteration, right? You're not doing an each because you're concerned only about a very specific key. So you can ask for some input from the user. They need to pass in the key, and then you use that information to query this hash for that specific thing. That is a pattern you're going to see over and over again. So I'm glad that you brought that up. This was a little bit like, not random, but not exactly what we were doing. So did this bring up any other questions for other people?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Adam here. So you mentioned hashes aren't indexed, roughly speaking, whereas arrays are. But we did find that we were able to call on hashes, using, brackets 0, brackets 1 when we broke it up. Is it that, I want to make sure my understanding's right, when we have a hash, there's almost like 2 indices that are tied, so there are indexes.
Oops.
So like if we change the order of a hash, like before we had, I think, suitcase, or we had a fridge and another fridge, but the order was different, like avocados, tortillas. Yeah. There is an index there where if we call, fridge dot value 0, that'll be different than fridge 2 dot value 0.
Right. So what you're doing, you're calling on the values. Yes, but then see, right, because what is the data type of that return value? If you do dot values, what data type are you getting back?
I mean, I guess you're calling an array, not a hash, right?
Right, so you get back a value, right? I'm sorry, you get back a hash from dot values when then the order does matter. So I do see what you're saying. If I called fridge 1 dot values, I'd get 8, 5, 10. Whereas if I called fridge 3 dot values, I get 5, 8, 10.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, and that'll happen. And then the order does matter. Actually, that's where it can get a little like dicey though, because then you have no idea what keys that was necessarily associated with. But what I'm saying here is that like the order of this doesn't matter. Like these hashes are not indexed. So you can't say like fridge 1, give me the 0 index key value pair. But you're right, because these, if you do dot keys or dot values, it spits back an array. It's got to order it somehow because the order does matter in an array.
Got it. But it's better practice to use the key name rather than 0, 1, 2, because that just doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah, just because then you're being very specific about what it is, what information you're trying to query. I would think though, like if you are doing like a dot keys and a dot value off this, and there's been no other manipulation of the hash in between calling the dot keys and dot values, then those 2 arrays, those indices should line up so that the key matches the value. Because that could come in handy. I could imagine some scenarios where that could come in handy. You just have to be careful there was no like other manipulation in between those 2 calls, right? Because if another key was inserted, then everything's off. Cool. Okay, I think what I want to do, we're going to do one more breakout room, but I want to give you a quick palm. I know this is a lot of information today, so let's take a quick 5-minute palm. We'll come back and do another breakout session. Alex, go ahead.
Do you mind just scrolling your terminal down so I can see that code during the palm?
Oh yeah, this one?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, 5 minutes goes fast, huh? All right, wait for everyone to pop back on here. Cool. All right. Any other questions come up during the Palm before I pop you into breakout rooms? Okay, what I'm going to have you do this time, slightly different. You'll be in the same breakout rooms, but I want you to work on your own machine, so independently. You can screen share if you want to, but I want you to test yourself, see if you, can do all the tasks, but utilize your breakout room mates to ask questions, to share ideas, and really lean on them for that support, okay? All right, and we'll come back in about 10, 12 minutes to discuss these. Cool, rooms are open. So we're not going to go through every single one of those things, but I want to open it up for questions. And or if you got stuck somewhere, we can have you screen share so we can look at the error and kind of walk through what the next steps would be. Because a lot of you had very, very similar errors and very similar questions as I was popping through the rooms. So if you hit something or you found a cool solution, I would love to hear from some of you. So if you have a question or would like to share, oh, V, yes, please.
Okay, I think that I might understand the problem now. I think it's a scope issue, but this is returning, you can't add a new key into hash during iteration. Is it because this new band, the hash new band does not exist inside this method?
That is a good question. So this is number 12, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're iterating through the new band, right? So that does exist and you've got the role and the name. But if the role exists, well, so here's the interesting thing here is that your role is always going to exist, right? In this case, because you're iterating over your current hash.
I thought that role, like this would be an argument, right? So you can provide different. No, it's not an argument.
No, because this is not a method definition, right? This is a block variable for an iteration. So for .each, you're iterating over these key value pairs. So role is going to be the keys that are currently in your hash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if we wrote this as a method, then we could pass in that argument. And then the rest of your logic would look pretty similar.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Right, what other questions? Maybe questions about ones from not question 12. We'll cover question 12, but 1 through 11. What questions came up there? And I can definitely ask a question for you though. Number 9 is assign a new value to the vocalist key of your hash. So in my new band hash right now, I already have a key of vocalist and it has a value. So if I want to change Banana Dude to, I don't know, Billy Bob, I always choose the same names. How would I do that? Does someone want to come off mute and help me? Yeah, Sandra.
Gotta figure out where mute is first.
I know.
So I put it, oh yeah, you could do it in Pry. But yeah, I put it like outside after it, the hash, just like new band, just like how we assigned one before with like the square bracket. Then I put the symbol for vocalist, and then outside of that bracket equals a new name in a string.
Yeah. That would be a funny band. Okay, so what's going on here though? Because remember I said that keys are unique. We already have a key called vocalist, but here we're assigning the value. So will it add like a second key of vocalist, or what's going on?
I think I just reassigned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So and that's exactly what it's doing. It's just reassigning it. And it's saying like, because it sees these two are the same, it just overrides this banana dude. It doesn't even do anything with it, just gets rid of it and replaces it with Joan Rivers. So we can try that here and pry. Oh, okay, it pressed enter for me. So we did that. And now if we look at new band, it is Joan Rivers. Cool. How about number 11? How about someone we haven't heard from yet? If you want to raise your hand to walk us through what your code was for number 11. Print out an announcement for your band to the terminal. It should list each band member's name and their role. Yay, Sydney.
Excuse me. So I did new band dot each do.
Just let me get there. New band dot each do.
And then I said role, comma name in the block variable.
Okay.
And then puts string interpolation, introducing pound braces role, comma name, or I'm sorry, pound braces name.
That makes, yes. Cool. And what was your thought process on how you came to this conclusion to use this code?
Well, I know I wanted to utilize both the key and the value.
Mm-hmm.
So I did each versus going through just the keys or just the values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you did each, you needed to go through each key value pair. So we want to do that enumeration or that iteration over the entire hash. Awesome. Yeah. And let's try to make sure that works. Cool. That looks good. Cool. All right. Shall we attempt number 12 together? We saw some code from V. And so let's explore that a little more. Does that, James, I'm going to give you first dibs at this one because your hand was up for the other one. So I'm not sure if you feel up for trying number 12. Can you create some code that given a band, role, and their name? So like 2 arguments. If that role already exists, return sorry role taken. If that role doesn't exist, add that new key value pair to the band. James, do you want to attempt it?
So I was actually getting back an error on this that said error private method add member, because I was defining add member and then searching through to see like what that is, and I've never seen private method before. So
yeah,
I'm not sure what that is.
That's a great question. Let's see if I get that same error and then we can debug it. So I like that you're, creating a method, right? Now here, the weird part of this, it might feel really weird, is we're not in a class, right? And so that's the kind of weird part. Ideally, we'd actually be in a class writing this method, but for right now, we're not. So cool. Walk me through.
2 arguments, like a role that you play and a name.
Okay, awesome.
And then I used an if statement. So if new band, and then I don't know, because new band was just a hash here and not an object, I used new band dot include question mark, and then I put the type or the role.
Yeah, so you said if new band dot include.
Because it should work on a hash.
Is that what you said, a role?
Yeah, so if that role exists.
Yeah, let's look at that.
If it includes it.
Perfect. Yeah, let's look at that real quick. So include is a method that lives on a hash. We know what it does in a string. What does it do on a hash? So include, if we pass it the argument, it will look for that as a key to see if that is a key that is in our hash. Cool. Okay. That'll be helpful. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. And then what did you do next?
Then next I just put, if include is true, because it should return a Boolean statement, correct? Then if true, then put sorry, role taken.
Yes. Okay, and then what did you do for your, did you do an else if?
Yeah, the else, I just did else. Else, new band brackets type equals name. Or role equals name. Sorry, I put type up there on my screen.
It's all good. Yeah, so we're saying if this new band includes the key, so if this will give us a true or a false. If it's a true, then that means that that key already exists, so we can return that. If this returns false, that role is not taken, that key does not exist, then we can add that key to our new band hash by using our assignment operator. Yeah, I think that looks good. We'll test it in a second, but Aiden and then Adam for questions.
Sorry, I had my hand raised for like having a solution for it, so I don't have a question.
Cool. I'll come back to you to see if you had a different solution. Adam, do you have a question, or did you have a different solution too?
I had a question about, I basically did what you did, but I was doing gets chomp, and I had a question about that solution.
About the gets.chomp?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're having some terminal interaction. What's the question?
So I was doing basically exactly what you have here, except I was saying, print, what's your name? And then name equals, I don't know what to call this, $stdin.gets.chomp. So it's basically asking for input.
Okay.
Cool. And then I was doing what's your role and doing the same thing to get the role.
Okay.
And I found that then I could use those variables in this, the following work. But I found that I had to type in for the role, colon lead _ guitar. And I was trying to figure out how to just get them to type lead guitar, and it'll format into the symbol.
Ah, good question. Let's put a pie in there. Oops. Oh, I moved my variable in here, so there was a scope issue. What's my name? My name is Kat. My role, I'm the guitar. I don't know. Okay, so role here is guitar, and you're saying you want it to match the keys, which is good, a good thing. We like our keys to match. And so we want it to be a symbol. How can anyone know, how can we change the string to a symbol? Yeah, Ben?
I think it's either .2_s or like .2_ symbol or something like that.
Yeah, 2s is like 2 string, right?
Yeah,
so
might be sim or something.
Yeah, so we have a method called .2, I think it's 2sim. We might have to look it up if that doesn't work. Yeah, right? So we can format it that way. So now no matter what they type in, it comes in as a string always with gets.chomp. So we can now format it here on the back end. So when we do gets.chomp, we can add a 2 symbol right here, and that'll make sure that this role is the format that we want. That's a really good question. And so, yeah, and then once we have those 2 things, let's see if this works. We can we can call this method and pass in name. Oops, we want role first, role and name. And then that will invoke this method, and it should do this thing. Let's put a pry here so we can hit it. Definitely wish we had some tests right now. Anyways, Cat, I'm the guitar. Uh-oh, undefined method. Oh, is this the error you're getting? Add member. Oh, right. I got to move this. Right, remember Ruby reads top to bottom, and I'm not inside of a class, so I don't get that benefit of being able to define methods anywhere I want because I'm not inside of a class. So we need to put this down at the bottom. Cat, guitar. Cool. And so now if I look at new band, it did something, right? It went through my flow control, and now I can see that guitar is there and cat is there. So we're good. And so if we call this again, if we do add member, say we try to do again for guitar, and we pass it Bob. Oh, whoops, guitar needs to be a symbol. Cool, and now new band should not be changed Oh no, it was changed. Oh, that's why, because every time, okay, sorry if that was confusing. Every time it calls this add member method, it resets our new band hash, right? So this is actually maybe a poor example. Ideally, what this would be is this variable, where we'd be inside a class, and this variable would be stored somewhere that would be so that we could keep track of this band, i.e. an instance variable, right? So maybe the class would have an attribute of like the new band or the band itself. And then it would keep track of it so that when we add something, it keeps track of it and is not reset every time the method is called. Isabel, go ahead.
Can you assign a hash to an instance variable?
Yeah, absolutely. You can make instance variables anything you want. And that's very common, right? Especially because instance variables, remember, kind of keep track of things for us. It doesn't reset. So maybe we have a class called, well, maybe the class is a band class. And when we create a new instance of a band, maybe it's an instance variable called like members, right? And then it would store this hash. And maybe it actually starts as an empty hash. And then you have this would be outside of the method, right? Then you have some kind of method that takes some arguments and would then check, new band now would be like at members, right? And so that it could check our instance variable, which is storing this information, to see if that band member exists or not. And then it would follow this flow control. Yeah, that was a really good question. Cool. I know you probably have so many more questions about hashes and all of this. I do encourage you to maybe visit the Ruby exercises for hashes. That'll help you with just the manipulation of like, how do I query a hash? How do I add a new key value pair? And then you can start working through some of the independent challenges. The practice ones that we have on the backend website have hashes within those independent challenges. So I encourage you to practice those, because then you will see like storing hashes as instance variables to keep track of things. So that's a good thing to practice this with. Well, any final questions before we wrap up today's lesson? Yeah, Ben.
Okay, I just kind of had an epiphany for the battleship, and I don't want to I want to structure my question. So can you have, let's say you have your key, you have 3 keys, and it could be like 3 different strings. You can assign that, can you have those 3 different strings contain the same value for each of them? Like let's say an object or something?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
Sweet.
Yeah, remember, values can be anything. They could be hashes, arrays, objects. Like if you have multiple classes, yes, a value can definitely be an object or an array of objects, anything you want it to be. Good question. Cool. Okay, then that's all I've got for you then.